right, welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're cracking open something really interesting. I mean, it's a fascinating little secret.
A whole subculture, really.
Exactly, a subculture where knowledge, like actual knowledge, is the ultimate currency. We're not talking about a major global corporate brand here.
Not at all.
We're talking about a movement, an ethos that, and this is the key part, deliberately chose invisibility over, going viral.
Yeah, they actively ran from the spotlight to pursue quality. It's the definitive case of if you know, you know.
And that phrase is so central to what we're doing today, isn't it?
It absolutely is. I mean, that's our mission here. It's not just some catchy branding. It was, literally the code that defined their whole approach.
So what are we going to unpack here?
We are going to get into the entire lineage, the specific craft, and the philosophy behind this whole world. We want to understand, in really granular detail, what real heads value when they prioritize genuine taste and craftsmanship over all the mainstream hype.
Right, over the numbers and the metrics.
Precisely.
And you really can't even begin this conversation without introducing their iconic symbol.
You really can't.
It's just instantly recognizable if you're in that circle. We were talking about the crimson frog gripping a blade. It's defiant, maybe a little humorous.
It's an image that really sticks with you. And it's the perfect, countercultural, non-marketing mascot. It signals exactly what they stand for. Craft over clout.
Yeah.
The focus is just laser sharp on that. It's a signifier that's really designed to filter the audience, almost like a password, an underground symbol for an underground movement.
Yeah, it rejects all that polished, corporate, and honestly kind of generic imagery that you see everywhere else in the scaled market.
It's a litmus test, 100%. If you see that frog and you get the context, you're signaled as part of the tribe. You're in on the joke. You appreciate the defiance.
It doesn't scream at you from a billboard.
No, it whispers confidence to a very niche community. It's their way of saying, look, we don't need to explain ourselves to everyone, only to those who understand what real quality is.
Okay, so let's unpack that ethos. Because the sources are super clear that long before that frog icon even existed, this whole thing started as a whisper.
In the California underground scene.
A communication network built on these shared, very specific values.
And the emphasis in the sources is always on this point. From the very beginning, the focus was never about chasing scale. It was purely about flavor, about texture, and establishing a baseline of truth in the jar.
And that was all communicated through word of mouth.
Right. They were moving in those early, really exclusive Bay Area rooms. And this is crucial. They came up from the Bay Area bloodline.
Okay, that's the key piece of historical context we need to zero in on. So they established themselves rooted in that Bay Area experience, specifically on cuts of GDP Granddaddy Purple.
During its purest iteration, yeah. This was way before the massive global expansion of the whole purple wave.
And long, long before the huge corporate brands started taking over the scene.
And the relevance of GDP here is that it represented an earlier standard of quality and terpene expression. It wasn't about, just the raw THC percentage.
It was about the profile, the feeling.
The whole experience.
Yeah.
That initial Bay Area heritage is everything. Those early rooms, they didn't just socialize. They were defining a very specific high-quality palette that just demanded authenticity.
So we're talking about a hyper-focus on real terps and real craft. It's almost this, regionalist approach to quality control. But if they're defining quality by this subjective feel, creative, relaxing, euphoric, how does a brand like that maintain consistency?
That's a great question.
Yeah, how do you stop that subjective approach from being, exploited, especially as they get even a little bit bigger?
And the answer is really rooted in their commitment to small batches and process control. The sources show the consistency isn't monitored by some external scalable metric. It's maintained by a consistent hand.
The dedicated team.
Exactly. The team that handles every single batch. They don't aim for the highest number, they aim for the peak experience.
So the philosophy is that quality doesn't need a lab number to prove itself.
Right. The feeling, the effect, the clean burn, that's the only proof you need. And to get that level of proof, it means small batches and absolutely no shortcuts.
That philosophy takes us right into the craft itself and the specific strains that really solidified the reputation. The signature cut they are most associated with. The one that truly announced their arrival is Toad Venom.
And what's so fascinating here is that the community acknowledges they are known for dialing this cut best, not necessarily for creating the initial cross.
Okay, so the genetics were out there.
The genetics existed, but this specific team perfected the expression of those genetics. They optimized the grow cycle to maximize its unique profile. They basically turned a good strain into an industry legend.
And the lineage is just incredible. Animal face crossed with Sin Mintz. The flavor description alone sounds like an entire ecosystem.
Oh.
When you read the critical notes, you see how complex their target profile is. We're talking about swamp funk pineapple, which is already wild, then chased by a vanilla cream, and then rounded out with this, like, floral gas.
That complexity must be so hard to maintain consistently. And it really speaks to the mastery they were aiming for, moving way beyond standard, easily recognizable profiles. They're creating a bouquet that's instantly identifiable to those who know the code.
And the critical reception inside that subculture reflects it. The sources are always highlighting a clean burn, a weightless euphoria. The effects are defined just as much as the flavor. And we keep seeing this data point pop up in the sources, a 9.6 out of 10 rating from the highest critic. Now, in an industry saturated with lab results and reviews, why is that one subjective rating so important? Who is this critic?
This is a perfect example of the if you know code in action. The highest critic isn't one person. It isn't a magazine.
It's not a standardized thing.
No. It represents the internal, anonymous consensus of the most trusted, most seasoned figures in the community, the actual real heads.
So in their world, a 9.6 from that group means more than a lab test.
Far more. A 30% THC lab test can be manipulated, or you can achieve it without true craft. This is an earned score, communicated peer-to-peer. And that makes it the highest form of acknowledgement you can get in their niche.
It's the ultimate insider handshake score. But they aren't just a one-trick pony, right? They don't just stick to that heavy, potent OG gas profile.
No. Longevity in this space requires proving you have range, and they definitely demonstrated that. They expanded with cuts like Grapefruit Z.
And that's a totally different direction.
Totally. Grapefruit Z pulls them into that brighter, sweeter, more Skittles-leaning territory. It's citrus bright, and it shows they could balance that old-school edge they were founded on.
The robust, authentic terps.
Right, with a new-school finish. They prove they can handle both the heavy, potent flavors and the sweeter, candy-focused ones without ever losing quality.
And this is where their dedication to craft just goes to a whole nother level, because the sources make it so clear that this commitment moves past just the flower. It goes deep into the extraction process.
Yeah. They have a massive, almost ideological focus on rosin over everything.
What does that mean in practice?
It's a defining trait. It speaks directly to their dedication to cleanliness and preservation. This wasn't just about making concentrates for maximum yield. They specifically emphasized that they only washed what they grew best.
Okay, break that down for us. Washing what they grew best sounds like an added layer of risk, of commitment. What's the difference between that artisanal approach and, standard industrial extraction?
The difference is preservation versus processing. Large-scale operations, they prioritize efficiency, they prioritize yield. This team prioritizes the integrity of the trial.
So they're trying to save the terpenes.
They're maximizing terpene preservation, making sure the small batches result in loud, accurate terps and really clean textures in the final rosin. That's why they focused on their star players for the wash: Grapefruit Z, Toad Venom, Rainbow Troutz, and Chem.
So every batch of rosin isn't just a byproduct, it's an intended, specific run.
Absolutely. Every single batch is hand-selected, extracted, and then jarred with just immense intent. We're talking customized press temperatures, specific cure methods designed for the unique profile of each cut.
That sounds incredibly labor-intensive.
It's the definition of a small-run, customized artisanal approach. It ensures the texture and flavor live up to the flower's reputation. And that detail, that's what the real enthusiasts are paying a premium for.
That level of dedication, that focus on process and lineage, it's almost a tribute in itself. And speaking of tributes, the sources are explicit that the founders' approach was heavily influenced by some major foundational figures in the Bay Area.
This is essential context for their legacy. The brand exists, in part, to keep the influence of these Bay legends alive. The founder learned directly from the people who built the exotic era.
The ones who defined that high-flavor, high-craft segment decades ago.
We're talking about figures like Drew of Seerious Strains and Delvin Cookie Monster.
And as the sources remind us, both are RIP, which just reinforces that this was a tight, real-world circle. Knowledge was passed down through direct mentorship, not through social media.
Right, and these were the minds behind legendary defining flavors like animal cookies and secret breakfast.
So this brand isn't just successful on its own.
No, it's a modern continuation of that exact lineage. They're making sure that specific level of flavor integrity and that commitment to the code endures, even as the larger industry professionalizes and, potentially homogenizes. They're keeping the old school ethics alive through new school craft.
So if we connect this back to the bigger picture, you see this profound, almost militant defiance in their market approach, in an industry where literally everyone is chasing virality.
Chasing followers, celebrity endorsement.
They explicitly chose invisibility as their strategy.
It is a complete countercultural move. And it proves they understood the value of scarcity. By just opting out of the mainstream hype machine, they created this artificial scarcity of knowledge.
Which, in turn, increased the perceived value of their product among their core base.
Exactly. They created an economy of trust, not an economy of attention.
And that kind of economy is incredibly powerful among the highly informed consumer. Their ethos holds true from the very beginning right up to today. Real heads, clean work, small batches, and a code only some understand.
And that crimson frog, that quiet mascot, it isn't there to yell for mass attention. It's a quiet signal of craft, of defiance, of lineage, all against the loud noise of the mass movement.
It's the ultimate insider handshake.
It is. It confirms to you, the consumer, that the product was grown, processed, and packaged with the highest level of intent possible.
So let's sum this up. What does this all mean for us? We've done this deep dive into a world that proves quality can thrive underground, almost because of its aversion to visibility. We covered the critical Bay Area lineage, defined by GDP, and the legacy of mentors like Drew and Delvin. We detailed their signature strains, Toad Venom and Grapefruit Z, and their meticulous commitment to small batch, clean rosin, all tied together by a coded language.
And the defining characteristic through all of this is their strategic rejection of the mass market. They built an entire business where flavor, texture, and reputation within the niche are the only marketing tools they need. The entire movement is defined by its guarded, coded nature.
Which brings up a really important question for you, the listener, to think about as you see brands that are focused on craft versus scale. If true quality requires small batches, extreme dedication, and crucially an intentional aversion to seeking virality, as we've just seen here, can that true quality ever successfully scale?
Yeah, that's the big question. Can the unique, specific flavor profiles and the ethical truth that was established in that original whisper actually survive a transition to the global stage? Or does that original code inevitably get compromised when volume takes priority over intent? That inherent tension between maximizing scale and preserving artisanal flavor, that is the single biggest lesson we take away from their choice to endure and even thrive in invisibility.